It's time for me to read you the latest installment of Ezekiel Kralen's Puppy Dog Stories. This is titled The Omeprazole Helps. O-M-E-P-R-A-Z-O-L-E. Omeprazole. I'm just guessing at how to pronounce that. Ezekiel Kralen wrote, Subject, he's back to screaming again. Continued. Date, November 16th. Well, Watson, upon delivering the phone and telling him I did not remove his songs, he thanked me profusely, so things calmed down and I was able to enjoy the pup's company a while longer. But that lasted only a few minutes before he asked me the predictable question, can I have a few $? At first I said no, but then changed my mind. Well, okay, $3 it is. I'll be right back. As I turned away toward my building, he started to gripe again. That's not what I meant. What about my allowance? You gave me $400 every month, and now I can't even get 20 or 40? Needless to say, at this ridiculous point, I decided to ignore him, return to Hovel to collect 2 GWs and 4 quarters, and step back out and handed it to him. It was then he went off on a rant about how he's going to have to commit crimes and send the dogs to the pound without my financial assistance. Bullshit, I retorted. You're just guilt-tripping me. You thrive better on the streets than anyone else I ever met. I'm going to get more than $2 million soon anyway, he blurted. I won my broken leg lawsuit, just waiting on my attorney to wrap it up, so what money you give me now I'll pay back even bigger. Of course, that lawsuit is just another absurd fabrication he cooked up, and as for the broken leg, Deke was referring to a scam he set up 3 years ago, sleeping in front of my building, legs sticking beyond the curb and into the street, just 3 feet behind a parked vehicle. So that once the driver pulls out, he'll start screaming in agony that the car backed up and ran over his legs. Not that he told me his plan, but it became clear to me with a little hindsight. I had even stepped outside twice to persuade him to pull his legs back so he wouldn't get hurt, but he refused to budge. In fact, he pretended to be sound asleep, oblivious to my appeal, not a grunt out of him. Even 2 cops walking by woke him up that he get out of harm's way. Of course, being the police, he obliged them, said thank you, but barely a minute after they departed, he placed his feet back over the curb. Sure enough, some 20 minutes later, all hell broke loose. I arose from my cot to look out the window and see Deke screaming bloody murder, squirming in fake pain on the sidewalk. You broke my foot! You ran over my foot! The driver had already stepped out, gazed down at Deke to see no harm done. His car did not back up and crush his foot or even touch him in any way. Satisfied to see that the vagrant was okay, the driver shrugged his shoulders, got back into his car, and drove off. Long story short, since I already wrote about this incident in a previous blog entry, in which I'm sure you remember, though I saw no injury, not even so much as a drop of blood when I stepped out to look at him, as he continued to crawl and scream in feigned torment, I called 911, and they quickly arrived to cart him off against his will. When I finally put 2 and 2 together a few days later, I realized he tried to scam someone, hoping he'd be handed a wad of moolah, so calling 911 was the last thing he wanted. Too fucking bad. I'm not playing his game. Ever since, he brings it up now and then, claiming his leg really did get broken. The bone was sticking out, and he was in a cast for months, and I'm a liar for claiming otherwise. In fact, he wore a removable cast the clinic gave him for lack of anything else to do, because no damage, not even a scrape, for less than a week, which he didn't put on until he got near my building to keep up the pretense. Now, back to this morning's meetup. You don't believe me, he squawked. I can show you the papers, or you can do it yourself. Just go to SF General and ask for my records. No, Deke, I replied, calling his bluff. I have to prove I'm closely related to you to do that. Just get a copy of the papers yourself, and I'll look them over. Of course, he didn't have any papers, but that's beside the point. He continued to yammer on while I adored the pooches for another few minutes, and then stood up and told him I'd had enough of his bullshit. I'm going to go for coffee now. He quieted down then, and I wandered off up to Rosenberg's. After sitting down on a doorstep to enjoy my first sips of Jaffa, I got up and approached the corner of 16th and Noe, but hid behind some shrubbery to see if Deke was still there. He was, but now in the company of 2 visitors, obviously indigent like him and on friendly terms. I've seen both of them before with Deke more than once. So with coffee in hand, I walked up to the trio and to their further side so I could pet the doggies once again before departing Huffle. Deke was subdued and fussing with the smartphone and showed me the screen to ask What's this? Those are chat icons, I replied. I removed them from the home screen twice, but they keep popping up no matter what. And since you wanted the phone right away, I didn't have time to figure out what's wrong and fix it. Then he swiped up to show me the app drawer and said some apps are missing. What happened to them? He already knows I delete or disable whatever app he never uses, some of which can cause trouble if he does load them, since they're registered in another person's name. But I wasn't about to get sucked into a convoluted dialogue simply because he can't grok how smartphones work, including how to re-enable apps he'll never use anyway. Knowing his penchant for inventing dumb excuses to malign me, I just shrugged my shoulders and said, "No, they're all there. The phone's glitchy is all." "Oh, okay," was all he said in reply, and I pet the hounds some more. But he seemed restless for me to leave as usual when in the company of another, with rare exception. Thus he waved a dismissive hand for me to scat. I had no intention to linger anyway. It's just that I never walked by the dogs without first showing them some love, and so I departed, leaving the trio to their own private badinage. I was wondering if Deke was going to start hollering up to my window after his compadres left, but nope. I saw him talking with one remaining visitor while packing up his things. Then both were gone minutes later. I don't think Deke cares to stir up arguments with me in the presence of his vagrant friends anymore, as he's realized it only works against him, because they've all seen my friendship with him many times and how I help out with charging his devices, caring for the dogs, giving him an allowance. They'd be more likely to avoid him or even chastise his vile behavior if Deke kept it up, and he'd lose customers for his, quote, products, pot and meth, as a result. I also don't think he cares to have me around when he's hanging with others, as he wants me to know as little as possible about his world beyond what we share. For the more I know and talk to them, the less he can get away with his backstabbing antics. These people actually like me from what they've witnessed. Here's one very recent example. Last night, when I brought down the doggies' meals, a young woman in Deke's company who saw me lay down a bowl of water and dog food remarked, "Oh, how nice." "Thank you. Kind of you to say so," I replied, and smiled at her, then pet the dogs and said, "Two sweetest little hounds on the planet." Deke remained silent, though I sense he begrudged the friendly exchange. I want to add here that this lady is also homeless, but always clean, nicely dressed, and amicable. So much for Deke controlling his minion's impression of me. Now get this, Watson. After completing this missive, but before sending it out, I needed to relieve myself, only to discover this sign posted to the restroom door. Notice of Pest Control Service, no access until 5 p.m. So I have 2 more hours to wait, but can I? There's always the old drop a caca in the bucket last resort, lined with a small trash bag with a sheet of the Bay Area Reporter, the most widely circulated LGBT newspaper on the planet, of course. What a stupid world this is. That's it for now. Have a great rest of the day, good doctor. I'll try to myself. Subject: Deke and 2 others below my window right now. Date November 17th, 8:56 p.m. He showed up about an hour ago and gave me 5 devices to charge. Then I prepared the pups' meal, got them water, and Deke a cup of blueberry tea per his request. He laid down a couple of old jackets for the dogs to rest on. In the picture they are in the lower right corner, though hard to make out in the darkness, not a peep out of him over money. Not even one iota of drama about anything. He thanked me when I brought down the food and thanked me again when I later delivered a new pair of doggy sweaters. He said, "Here, I'll put them on." He usually asks me to do that, but I said, "Okay," and returned hovel. When I stepped out to refill the water bowl some minutes later, I saw one sweater flung over his leg and a black felt pen in his hand. He was writing "Lucky" on it in large chunky letters, like a rap star. I presume he'll do the same for Flacco. As these sweaters are solid maroon instead of camouflage, I guess he figured lettering them would stand out nicely, and it does from what I saw. Well, let's see how the rest of this visit goes. As the next time he mentions greenbacks, I will make it very clear that his threat to commit violence on me has cost him an entire month's salary, and if he does it again, he'll forfeit another month. And if he screams at me or the dogs, I'll skip his next allowance. If he puts up a stink, I'll tell him it's either that or I'll put a restraining order on you and you'll be banned from the Castro, so don't try me. But I think he intuits all that and is not about to rattle my cage for some time to come. Subject, he just left, November 17, 9:22 p.m. Only a few minutes after I posted you my last missive, he told me to bring everything down, plus a C cord. Soon as I opened the gate, he was there to collect his devices, then thanked me and wished me a good night. God bless, I answered back and returned hovel. I looked out the window to see the pups ready to move on in their little sweaters as their master got things sorted in his cart. Then I realized Flacco was looking straight at me, even though I made no sound that would summon her attention. I threw some kisses as she continued to gaze upward. Then it was time to depart. They trotted behind Deke and his cart, leashes dragging behind them, untethered. I hope for many more peaceful meetups from here on in. How much longer is this? Jesus. Okay, one more page. Subject, 3 more tents behind my building. Date, November 18th. Been there the past 2 days. Amusing that the large green one looks just like mine. May even be the exact same model. Boy, did I sleep well last night, even after waking up around 4 a.m. with a bout of nonstop hacking from acid reflux. It didn't last long, maybe 5 minutes. I've been popping 1 Omeprazole pill each day, and it's working. Then I lied down again, resumed listening to horror tales on my backup smartphone, then zonked out and didn't wake up until 11:20 a.m. Though through it all I felt very much at peace. Thanks to a friendly meet-up with Deke yesterday evening, he didn't even keep me up late, but left well before 10 p.m. His behavior was superb all the way around, so I guess he wanted to show me he's capable of acting like a decent human being. Which suggests my suspicion is correct. He's a bodhisattva guardian or shaman putting me through my paces, and the solution was to forfeit his allowance as leverage rather than cave into fear. I think it's safe then to resume his usual stipend of $100 a week, split into 2 portions, but no retroactive payment. It's gone for good, thanks to his threat of violence. I'll make sure he knows this, and that I will not hesitate to charge him $50 every time he threatens me, and $20 every time he screams at me or the pups, or lashes them to a standing bike, or lets them shiver or rest directly on the filthy cold sidewalk. I'm sure he'll comply, and why shouldn't he? His life will be so much better as a result, as will the dog's, and mine as well. I was feeling crappy yesterday before our favorable meetup. Perhaps the COVID/flu shots played a part, though worry over Deke's shitty behavior and what I'm going to do about it didn't help. Not to mention the very reason I was visiting Medi-Cal in the first place, anxiety over losing my internet service. It was a dreary gray morning stroll on my way to the Medi-Cal office on Harrison Street, a tight crisscross of busy roads all the way, and hour-long, tiresome blocks to traverse with the persistent rush of traffic and clusters of homeless tents here and there, some so thick I had to veer around by either crossing the street or walking off curb. Oddly enough, the Medi-Cal building is in the same locale as the gay bars south of Market, including Hole-in-the-Wall Saloon, where I first met Arwen and my great odyssey began. The walk back was equally glum, though with a spark of hope that the letter from Medi-Cal would resolve my affordable connectivity program quagmire. I felt like a PTSD-riddled knight of the Round Table who finally discovered the Holy Grail in the form of a letter now secured in my backpack, yet with a new fear I might be mugged and the Grail stolen before I arrived safely hovel. Needless to say, I rushed swiftly homeward, rode the underground metro most of the way, and wasn't in a calm state of mind until I whipped out the letter and took a snapshot of it, then copied it to my laptop, whence I uploaded it to my ACP account. Imagine if just before I got a chance to take a picture of that paper worth its weight in souls, a sudden breeze blew through my window and swept it outside. So, of course, I was careful to prevent such a sad outcome by first shutting the window, and that, dear Watson, is my latest Brindlekin tale, though far from the last.